right, guys, I'm going to give you a posture exercise just to start with. And this is an exercise to do to just be able to find the muscles I'm talking about. Do it at home often, and then try to replicate it when you're out and about, and just trying to find that good posture, a good standing. Because the best way to strengthen these stabilizer muscles is good posture and to use them constantly, and they'll get stronger. And once you're comfortable with doing it in standing, then you're going to try to do it in your running and trying to do it in your just daily activities. So you need to be able to see my feet, so I'm going to step back a little bit. The setup is super important. Just because the stabilizer muscles generally respond to posture. So you have good posture, the stabilizer muscles get the idea that it's time to be there to help you do whatever you're going to do. Stabilizer muscles also will click on before you get ready to move. So my body, my brain knows I'm getting ready to take a step before I've consciously decided I'm going to take a step. They have to click in before because they have to prepare so you're ready to go. So that's the other reason why, the setup's kind of important, especially at the beginning where you're just trying to find them. Once you're kind of aware of what it feels like, then I find, at least for me, I can kind of think about it and they'll turn on if I feel like, oh, I'm not quite as stable as I'd like to be. So you need your feet in front of you, underneath your body. So we don't want a foot turned out and we don't want a wide stance, especially at the beginning. Once you get good at it, you can have a wider stance and still be able to activate these muscles. So big toes are lined up. They're touching, and then the heels turn out slightly. So the turnout of the heels, I find, helps people get into the position that lets the hip points in front move closer together. As these move closer together, this lower fiber of the transverse abdominis, because it's moving closer together, it tends to start to engage. If we're out too wide, or we have a foot turned out, or we're kind of cockeyed in our hips or anything like that, it's a lot harder, especially at the beginning, for the muscle to say, oh, we're supposed to be there. So I always say set up for success. So big toes touching, heels slightly apart. Now, sometimes people will say that it bothers the knees to be in this position. If you find that is the case, it's because you're using your adductors only, squeezing the legs together, and not the inner groin muscle at the top, that adductor brevis. So if you feel like that is really bothering my knees, you're just going to take your hands, and remember it's at the top here, and you're just going to push back a little bit with the inner groins. And you should, I'm going to do it from the side so you can see the response. So as soon as I do that, it kind of pushes my butt back a little bit. We actually want that to eventually happen anyway. And a lot of times, just putting the people's feet in this position facilitates that. But if you're finding it doesn't, manually press them in. And remember the line of pull, pubic bone to the back of the femur, so it's got to go internal. Then you're going to take your hands, your monitor hands, and you're going to find those hip points, and you're just going to run down towards the pubic bone, and you're going to notice that you now have a little, what I call a hip pocket. So it's a little softness. That means the head of the femur is in its socket and it's not pushing forward. We don't want it to push out of its socket. If the knees are bent, you can go ahead and leave them bent. If they're straight, that's fine. If you find that they're locked, what I want you to do is push the head of the femur back until the legs straighten. What happens is people will come to a locked knee, they'll bend their knee, now you've artificially shortened your hamstrings. We don't want artificially shortened hamstrings. So the better solution is just to push back, line the butt up with where the knees are, and then you're back in your feet. As soon as you get that set up, and you feel like you've got inner groins turning in, you're just going to touch. You might feel some tone there, maybe not. Like I say, sometimes these can be very weak on people. If you do feel some tone, just note it, that's great. Then between the hip points, see if you feel some tone there. And again, sometimes it's weak, and so we don't feel anything at the beginning. If you do, again, that's great, just notice that. And then take the hands so that you come at the top of that pelvis, and just feel along the edges until you come to the sides, and this is your glute med TFL. So with the feet in this position, you should feel some muscle here. If you don't feel any muscle, think about lightly scrubbing the feet away isometrically. So what that means is I didn't move my feet. Isometrically means that the feet don't move, but what you'll feel when you do that is the femurs internally rotate because the feet are attached, they can't move. So it will make this muscle fire up. I used to really like this cue, and I still use it a lot in yoga because it's hard for people to find this muscle. But what I don't want you to think of is I only can use my feet to find this muscle. It's just a trick to get the muscle to turn on, to get you aware of it. You don't need your feet for this muscle to turn on. But if you're not feeling it, scrub away and just see if you notice it. As soon as you scrub away, what you should feel is the transverse abdominis, the lower parts of that, fire up even more. So it should feel like, okay, it's pulling towards the midline even more. And just play with it and see if you feel it. The one thing you have to be careful of is that you're not just feeling it in the knees, because it's turning the entire femur, so the knees are going to be affected. But if all you feel is in the knees, you didn't get it quite right. It's right up here that you're going to feel the activity, and it's just a turning in of the femur and a light pulling back because it internally rotates and seats the head of the femur. And then once you have that, you can touch here at the top of the rib cage and just draw a line down to your pelvis. And I always add this piece because for a lot of people, once this is all set up, the rib cage has managed to jut forward, and we don't want that. That's the upper part of the transverse abdominis that we need. So if you draw the line down and you feel like, oh, my rib cage is way forward, I'm just going to draw that down, draw towards the midline, and then you can check again and see if it didn't just kind of snug you up. So again, the setup, big toes are touching, they're even with each other, heels slightly apart. Check the knees. Make sure that the knees are not locked or the knees are not bent. Either one, you're going to push back on those hip pockets until the knees straighten. And then you can come upright, check the rib cage, make sure that you haven't pushed it forward. Slide the hands between the groins and see if you have any muscle tone. You're just checking. Inner groins, see if there's muscle tone. If you're feeling a lot in the knees, then you're just going to push some of that tissue back and see if you can internally rotate to get that adductor brevis to come on. Slide the hands onto the sides, see if you feel that muscular tone. If not, lightly scrub the feet away with the idea that you don't have to use your feet. You're just seeing if you can play with the muscle. And then see if you can feel what all of those pieces feel like. And then check again that you haven't locked your knees. Sometimes we are so good at locking our knees, we do it before we even realize we did it. And if you did, push back and reestablish that. So play with that, and again, post comments if it doesn't make sense. I'll find a different way to teach it so that it does. And I'm going to post this video, and I'm also going to do one that lets you feel what the lower transverse abdominis feels like when the legs are moving, because it will make it easier for you to see, oh, that's what muscle she's talking about. So play with this one and let me know, and have a great day.